Welcome to our channel.
Let's uncover the life story of Greta Thunberg, the teenager who stood up to world leaders and sparked a global movement that shook the foundations of climate politics forever. This is the extraordinary tale of a young girl who transformed from a quiet student struggling with her own battles into the most recognizable face of environmental activism worldwide. Her story isn't just about climate change. It's about the power of one voice to ignite millions and challenge the most powerful people on Earth. Picture this, a 15-year-old girl sitting alone outside the Swedish parliament with a handmade sign, refusing to go to school until her government took climate action seriously. What started as a solitary protest would become the catalyst for the largest youth movement in history. But how did a shy teenager from Stockholm become Time magazine's Person of the Year and challenge presidents and prime ministers on the world's biggest stages? Today, we're diving deep into the remarkable journey of Greta Thunberg, from her early struggles with autism and selective mutism to becoming the voice of a generation demanding climate justice. This isn't just another celebrity biography. This is the story of how one person's unwavering determination can literally change the world. Greta Tintin, Eleonora Ernman. Thunberg was born on January 3, 2003 in Stockholm, Sweden, into a family where creativity and performance were deeply valued. Her mother, Malena Ernman, was a renowned opera singer who represented Sweden in the Eurovision Song Contest, while her father, Svante Thunberg, was an actor and author. Growing up in this artistic household, Greta was exposed to the spotlight from an early age, though she would later use it for purposes her parents never anticipated. The Thunberg family lived a relatively privileged life in Stockholm's cultural scene, but beneath the surface, young Greta was fighting battles that would profoundly shape her worldview. At age 8, she first learned about climate change in school, and unlike her classmates who seemed to move on from the topic, Greta became deeply troubled by what she had learned. The images of melting glaciers and dying polar bears haunted her thoughts, creating an obsession that would consume her young mind. When Greta was 11, she experienced what her family later described as a dark period. She became withdrawn, stopped speaking to anyone outside her immediate family, and refused to eat. Her parents watched helplessly as their vibrant daughter seemed to disappear before their eyes. It was during this difficult time that Greta was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and selective mutism, conditions that she would later describe as her superpowers, giving her the ability to see the world in black and white when others saw only shades of gray. The turning point came when Greta began to channel her climate anxiety into action. She started by convincing her own family to change their lifestyle, persuading her mother to give up her international singing career to avoid flying, and converting the entire household to veganism. But Greta quickly realized that individual action, while important, wasn't enough to address the scale of the climate crisis. In May 2018, Greta won a climate change essay competition in a local newspaper, which led to her first contact with climate activists. However, she was frustrated by the adult activists' approaches and their willingness to compromise. This frustration would fuel her decision to take matters into her own hands in the most dramatic way possible. On August 20th, 2018, instead of attending school, 15-year-old Greta sat down outside the Swedish parliament with a sign reading, "School Strike for Climate" in Swedish. Her demand was simple. The Swedish government must reduce carbon emissions in accordance with the Paris Agreement. She vowed to continue her strike until the parliamentary elections in September, and then continue every Friday until Sweden aligned with the Paris Agreement goals. Those early days were lonely and discouraging. Greta sat alone in the rain, with only a few curious passers-by stopping to ask about her sign. Her parents were initially unsupportive, worried about her missing school and the potential consequences. But Greta's determination was unshakable. She had calculated that there was no point in studying for a future that might not exist due to climate change. Slowly, her solitary protest began to attract attention. Other students started joining her, and social media posts about the quiet girl with the powerful message began to spread. Within months, What started as one teenager's school strike had evolved into a global phenomenon known as Fridays for Future, with millions of young people across the world walking out of their classrooms to demand climate action. The movement's growth was meteoric. By December 2018, Greta was invited to speak at the UN Climate Change Conference in Poland, where her blunt, unflinching speech caught the attention of world leaders and media outlets globally. Her message was simple, yet devastating. You are not mature enough to tell it like it is. Even that burden you leave to us children. But it was her speech at the UN Climate Action Summit in September 2019 that truly cemented her place in history. Standing before world leaders, her voice trembling with emotion, Greta delivered one of the most powerful speeches in modern history. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. The speech was watched by millions worldwide and became a defining moment of the climate movement. Her phrase, "How dare you?" became a rallying cry for environmental activists across the globe. Time magazine named her Person of the Year in 2019, making her the youngest individual ever to receive this honor. Greta's influence extended far beyond speeches and protests. She inspired legislative changes, corporate commitments, and a fundamental shift in how climate change was discussed in mainstream media. The Greta effect became a recognized phenomenon, describing how her activism influenced everything from flight-shaming movements to increased investment in renewable energy. Her methods weren't without controversy. Critics accused her of being too radical, too young, or merely a puppet of adult activists. Some world leaders, including former President Donald Trump, openly mocked her on social media. But Greta's response to criticism was always measured and focused on the science rather than personal attacks. Despite her global fame, Greta has remained remarkably grounded in her personal life. She has been open about her autism, describing it as a gift that allows her to focus intensely on issues she cares about and speak truth without the social filters that often constrain others. She has no interest in traditional celebrity culture, consistently refusing to monetize her activism or accept awards that she feels are meaningless without action. Greta's family has made significant sacrifices to support her activism. Her mother's career effectively ended when she stopped flying, and the family has faced both praise and criticism for their lifestyle changes. Her younger sister, Beata, has also been affected by the family's high profile, though she has chosen to stay largely out of the public eye. Financially, Greta has been careful to maintain her independence. She has donated prize money from various awards to climate organizations and has established a foundation to support environmental causes. Her estimated net worth remains modest, as she has consistently prioritized her message over personal financial gain. The teenager who once sat alone outside the Swedish parliament has fundamentally changed how the world talks about climate change. She has shown that age is no barrier to making a difference, and that sometimes the most powerful voice in the room belongs to someone who refuses to be silenced by convention or politeness. What can we learn from Greta Thunberg's journey? Her story teaches us that authenticity is more powerful than perfection, that persistence can overcome seemingly impossible odds, and that sometimes the world needs someone willing to speak uncomfortable truths. Greta shows us that our perceived weaknesses can become our greatest strengths, and that one person's courage can inspire millions to act. Her journey reminds us that change doesn't always come from those in power. Sometimes it comes from those who refuse to accept the status quo and are willing to sacrifice their comfort for their convictions. Greta Thunberg didn't just become an activist. She became a symbol of hope for a generation that inherited a climate crisis and refused to accept it as inevitable. If you enjoyed this journey through Greta Thunberg's extraordinary life, like, comment, and subscribe for more legendary life paths only on Celeb Path. Her story continues to unfold, and the movement she started continues to grow, proving that sometimes the most powerful force for change comes from the most unexpected places.